Don't say it.
No, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
I was about to say, welcome back to another great episode of the Strongfit Podcast.
Episode 267.
And it's going to be a fucking crazy one today, and excuse my language, but
Yeah.
we have some insane results.
Yeah.
If you've been following along the podcast, we've been talking about explaining anxiety, the physiological side of it.
At least.
Not necessarily the different symptoms,
No.
but the
Yeah,
physiological side,
we
how
could
it
go
relates to
into that,
lactate. But now it seems that the lactate also relates to the freeze/depression.
Depression, yeah. That's a number of podcasts right there, but I think we can give a go at it to explain the entire thing. Like obviously, we'll have entire courses on this, but this is our shot at explaining it. Number one, depression and lactate.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So we have a case study, and
so valuable, by the way.
Yeah.
This is a gold mine.
And she has allowed us to use her name and everything. And she's done the seminar, she's done the Coaches Week. She's been with us for a long time, follows everything.
2 years, I think.
I tried helping her with anxiety, and it was working, but there was things I couldn't control in that area. And I think the testing actually allows us to have a much better grasp of what's happening.
Oh yeah.
More than just the, if you will, holistic and, kind of person to person, which is necessary, which, I mean, you're still doing, but allows us to have the numbers to really understand where she is at the start of the day.
And the physiology of it, because there is two sides. There is that, like the human side, and because of the prediction and all that stuff, but there's also a physiology to it.
Right.
And so thank you, Nicole, for allowing us for giving us this, because this is a gold mine. And so what happened is Nicole started to test her lactate levels morning and night, and also gave us the sheet with where her anxiety was at during the day, like her training, how she felt. So she really gave us like a very important case study for 5 weeks. And at that time, when she started to do the test, lactate testing, because I told her to do that, we started to incorporate that idea of the steady cardio, the quit -1.
Yeah.
So steady cardio, but at a level where your heart rate is almost at that moment where, like, okay, I can't maintain this, I want to quit, right below that.
Yeah.
And the idea was Nicole has a tendency to spike too much in her behavior at work, in life, not just training. She spikes. Her training is strongman training, is a lot of spiking continuously. And she does that at work, which is a main issue for her, is her relationship with her manager at work. But every time there's a big fight, she spikes, walks away, and is not able to deal with it. And that leads to major crashes for her. At least that was my understanding coming in, right? And so I'm like, all right. And then we starting to talk about behavior. It's like, well, first of all, let's not make you spike.
Yeah.
So let's introduce stress and not let you
freak out. Yeah.
So exposure therapy, we're going to put a little bit, and then, so there's two of them, but the first one was, let's stay right below that, which means stress, but you're not allowed to spike.
Right.
So learning a different way to deal with stress, That's the beta 2 versus beta 3 brainwave and everything. But I'm like, all right, but let's test the lactate. And then she sends me those numbers, and we need like 5 podcasts on this alone. But let's start with the first one. So turns out, how do I describe this? Nicole woke up with some high levels of lactate in the morning. Let's put it this way. There's some days where she went to bed, first of all, at 16.7. And I'm like, what do you mean? So when I saw that, I was like, is that a 1.67 or is it a 16.7? So people understand a normal level of lactate in the blood is around 1.
Yeah.
Between 1 and 2, maybe 3, but that means you're already on the stressed outside. You're at 5, 6, that means you're in a full fight.
That's going full fight, and then past that, it starts to go towards flight, right?
Probably, because if you look, if I put it into training terms, right, when you're at 5, you're on the treadmill and you're starting to go fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be about that,
that's
right?
That's sprint.
When you're at 10, we're talking like sandbag squats, lifting weight, shit like that, and like you're going to failure. 14 to 16, we tested it one day during a seminar. It's 400-meter run, full speed, with as many sandbag squats as you could do.
Right.
Most people cannot create enough lactate to go past the 16 millimole.
Right.
That's usually their VLA max, the maximum amount of lactate they can produce. So she was waking up one day she woke up at 17.7, which means she woke up at a VLA max level.
Right.
Which is, by the way, this introduced so many new ideas around, like it's crazy. And so you have to understand that most people cannot go to 20, right?
Right. And so could you read the description of when she woke up at 17? What was the type of headspace she was in?
Right. She was very tired, still almost hard to breathe. Okay. Stayed in bed most of the day. So what happened is the morning before, she woke up at 16.3, was more anxious, very, very tired. Her anxiety was at 8. Right. She had a workout, but she wasn't doing too good.
Yeah, and I think like the important thing to go at there is very tired, but still hard to breathe. And so,
right, so that's the flight.
It's a flight going almost into the freeze, which we'll get into. But it's right. You're the usual symptoms of a panic attack is when you're having a hard time breathing.
Right, exactly. So, for example, like there's one when she's using words that tell you extremely anxious, scared, on edge, like I'm falling over and over again, I'm being hunted. That was 18.
Yeah.
So that was in the morning. She woke up at 18.8 after a bad day the day before. But those are ridiculous numbers. But there's also one day where she woke up at 23.4. So the machine clocks at 24. So
is there a reason for that? Do you know? Just because
nobody goes past 24.
Supposedly?
Yeah. She woke up at that. So first of all, it tells you there is no anaerobic threshold, because the idea was anaerobic threshold, that production of lactate so high is produced because there's not enough oxygen to take care of the lactate.
Right.
Well, explain to me that one then.
Yeah.
Because she's sleeping fine. So she's not exercising hard or anything. So it has nothing to do with the level of oxygen. She was sleeping. Right. So there's so much out of this study. It's crazy. But what we're going to talk about that is very interesting is that number of 20.
Yeah.
So at 18.8, she's obviously in a full flight.
Yeah.
Right? Being hunted and everything. And then she gets to, anytime she's around 20, she gets exhausted, beside myself, rock bottom, overloaded, done, depressed. Exhausted, overwhelmed, depressed, beside myself. Exhausted, overloaded, confused, depressed. So every time she reached past 20, she went from full flight to full freeze. Which is exactly what we talked about. And so that's what we saw. Like, she told me that she felt the worst at 18.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, like...
That's full panic, yeah.
Yeah, and then when she went to 20, she didn't feel anything. She was just not within herself anymore. Right. She was in a full freeze mode.
That's fucking... I mean, it brings in such a interesting conversation, because it gives so much... Ale gives so much hope to people, knowing that
that's what it did for her.
There is a way. There's a reason things are happening.
It's not in your head,
and it's exactly. It's not me going crazy.
Yeah.
There's a physiological aspect.
Exactly.
And
he says right here.
Yeah, and the work isn't necessarily done in a passive way with medication.
Right.
It's understanding how to deal with the stresses, how to take action every morning. Right. Based on how you're waking up and the levels of lactate that you're waking up
and
at.
that you feel like shit when you wake up, not because it's in your head, not because your soul is dark, not because, you know what I mean? Like, you're not dirty inside, you're fucking in way past a panic attack, you are poisoning yourself.
Yeah, right.
That's really what this is, right? And so I want to talk about that number of 20 millimole, because that's when I started to go, I know that number. So, this is, you'll have to stop me because I can go on for about 6 hours on this one. Like, there's so many rabbit holes out of this, it's crazy. But I'll give you some rabbit holes, and then we dig into the ones you want to dig about. Yeah. So I knew that number 20 millimole, I was like, I know that one. And turns out, no shit, because I read it everywhere. So I had one study that was showing that high levels of lactate, 20 millimoles, start to mess with the gamma brain waves.
Okay.
So for people, you go, when you go into alpha meditation, I mean, technically you go delta to theta to alpha, but then when you start looking at the world, so confrontation, beta is where negative shit happens. Then you go to gamma, it's even higher excitation, higher amplitude of the brain waves. Anyway, this is where the complex networks of the brain happen, is in the gamma stuff. Okay. Right. So when you get to 20 millimole with the lactate, because it feeds the brain and everything, it starts to mess with the gamma, is disruptive to the gamma brain waves. Okay. Which means makes you drop back down to a more negative, reactive mindset.
Okay.
That alone, how fascinating is that? I have another study that was showing you that there is a direct link between major depression and the gamma brainwave.
Okay.
That the disruption of the gamma brainwave was maybe not causing depression, but
because we were talking in a past podcast, it was beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, and then it would jump
you go to gamma. Yeah, and so disruption of gamma is linked to depression.
Okay.
Right, so that 20 millimole links to disruption of gamma, that links to depression.
Right.
Right, so that's the first one. On top of that, let's talk about the lactate at 20 millimole, because people will go, well, all I have to do is to lower the lactate.
Right.
Instead of a measurement target, but it's not that.
Right.
So it turns out that when I was going back to the 20 millimole, it turned out that the 20 millimole is the lactic acidosis. That's what it shows,
right.
lactic acidosis. So problem is there is no such thing as lactic acidosis. Lactate is not responsible for the acidity at 20 millimole. So I need to explain what is responsible for the acidity.
Right.
So it turns out there's many reasons why your pH drops in those cases. So I'm going to give the two, but there's many more because CO2 comes into play and everything. The thing was, you see the levels of, in certain situations, you see the level of lactate going up and the pH going down. So naturally, they associated the two because lactate is a waste product.
Yeah.
Done. Oversimplification, completely wrong. The level measuring the lactate is an indirect measure of acidity because they are linked, but there's no causation there. So what happens is to produce lactate, I need the glycolysis.
Yeah.
Right. Glycolysis produces ATP, a measure of energy. So imagine it produces ATP, so glucose to lactate, right? And I end up with a battery full of energy. That's ATP. To use that, to take the energy out of the battery, I need to turn that ATP into ADP, which gives me the energy, but also gives me a proton. That proton lowers the pH level.
Okay.
So, I know.
It's very specific then.
There's many systems like that, but so what it means is that when I have glycolysis and I produce ATP, so energy, to use that energy, what will happen when I use that energy is it will lower my pH.
Right.
It's not the lactate that lowers the pH. It's using the energy that does. It's using ATP.
Right.
Because ATP had to be transformed in ADP, which gives you the energy, but also a phosphate proton. So that's the problem. Right.
Okay.
So that is that system. So the mistake is to say, well, lactate equals pH going down. Actually, the lactate is a buffer. It eats protons.
Okay.
So actually, the lactate is a buffer for that energy being used, not lowering your acidity too much.
Okay.
So when they say lactic acidosis, it's the most incorrect thing you can say.
Right. It's a lack of buffering and lack of
Well, it's actually like there's so much energy being used that even the lactate cannot stop it from lowering the pH.
Right.
So the lactate is your helper on this. That means like lowering lactate levels is not the point. The point is that you're producing so much energy that your
ADP?
pH will go down.
Okay.
Right. On top of it, there's a transporter of lactate that has the high affinity for lactate. It's called the MC2 that also has a proton associated with it. So the more starts to go to the brain, the more the acidity of the brain drops. So you could see that someone that produces massive amount of lactate, that means, but the question is why? Why is she producing the massive amount of lactate, which is what no one is asking. If it's a waste product, you don't need to...
Right. Well, and this is where the symptoms of anxiety start to come in.
Exactly. That's what's happening. The problem is not the lactate. The lactate is a buffer that is there to keep you alive while you are demanding a huge amount of energy. The problem is the demand of energy. It's not the lactate. Those levels of lactate shows you how much her body is fighting to stay alive.
Right.
And not fry the brain through acidity.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the lactate is doing there. It's trying to eat away the proton so you don't die. So the lactate is your helper. So saying lactic acidosis is so wrong. I have so many studies on this. Anyway. So the point is, she is asking, she has a demand of energy that is far too high.
Right.
Right. But that's behavioral. So in that sense, so what happens is stress is just a demand for energy being spent. So it's a demand for ATP turning into ADP, just lowering the pH. That's the problem is the demand of energy. Is the demand of energy justified? So if you stress about a problem that you're not dealing with, all you're gonna get is more and then more and more and more and more to the moment where it starts to become a physiological risk for you.
Right.
Acidity will literally fry you. Just so you understand, the pH, we are alive between 735 and 745 pH level.
Yeah.
That's it. If you start to fuck around outside of that, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
It's literally that sensitive. So the lactate is just a measure of that. And so the issue here is that the demand of energy is too great for the environment, for what is actually justifiable, because she's stressing about a situation she did not deal with, but there is no physical demand
that's requiring
that is
energy.
there. Yeah, exactly. So the energy is being produced, and then more energy is being produced, and more energy is being produced, but not used.
Right.
Just produced.
Right. Now, she is training, but yet it's the improper training.
Right. So there's exactly. So now we're getting into the interesting part.
Yeah.
She's training, but look at the training she's doing. Strongman, spike, walk away, rest.
Right.
Come back, spike, walk away. Yeah. So she's teaching herself to spike stress-wise, level-wise, energy demanding-wise in her training as well as in her life.
Right.
So prediction versus observation. Like her entire life is exploding through stress, beta 3, all that stuff, right? To a moment where the demand of energy is so great, it's frying her, disruption of gamma, goes back into super reactive, super negative person. Remember, you can only feel negative into the beta waves.
Right.
Disruption of gamma, you fall back into beta, everything is negative, creates more, exactly. Like, well, I feel like shit now. Not understanding that she feels like shit because of the demand of energy,
right.
So that creates another demand of energy, and now you're in that fucking vicious cycle. You cannot come up. And once you start to raise that level at that 20, which is not a target, but a measurement, then you're getting into a full freeze because the body's like, if we do this, we're gonna die. That starts to get a poison through acidity. And so the body is like, fling, and shuts you down until the levels go back. So you stop producing energy. That's a freeze mode. That's a depression.
Right.
Up until you catch back, and then you redo the same cycle. And on and on and on and on again. But so the fascinating part is the demand of energy that is the problem.
Right.
That is a completely different way of looking at things.
Yeah, well, because...
You know what I mean?
When you look at
behavior.
Modern treatment of these behaviors and these symptoms and these causes, it's always a taking away of stressors and energy expenditure.
So all you're doing is telling the body freeze is good.
Yeah.
Right. So, at that moment, but it's not teaching you to behave differently.
Yeah.
So, and the source of the issue on that is that she goes, manager is an asshole. He's really an asshole. She explodes, can't say anything, and then walks away. All right, but that's a situation not dealt with.
Right.
So that brings us to the prediction versus observation system, where I made a post the other day about what is a memory. Mm-hmm. Right, and it's very interesting. A memory, if you look at it truly, is an event that happened that stays within you until you can truly understand what happened, so that you can structure your future based on that.
Okay.
That's why some memories stay around, because you have not learned the lesson fully. Once you have fully learned the lesson, the memory doesn't stick.
Right.
It's there, but you go like,
I
got because you used it.
Right.
And so the ones that are not being used stick around. And if you look at a trauma, it's what? It's emotion associated with a memory.
Right.
Emotion is how much do I need to crank to learn from that event.
Right.
So once you start learning from that event, the emotion will turn down, because it's like, okay, we're doing what we do, which is learning.
Right.
Right. So positive emotion means, how did that happen and how do we do it again? Negative emotion is what happened and how do we avoid it?
Right.
That's why it's so hard to deal with a rape or stuff like that. It's just like, well, it's not my fault. I'm like, but that's not the point. It's how do I learn from it? But it's associated with such a negative feeling that you cannot look at it. Right. If you can look at it, you'll never learn from it.
Yeah, exactly.
So imagine what victimhood mentality does to you.
Right, which is a large
it's a large
percentage.
Exactly. But imagine what it would do to you.
Yeah.
That means it's never you. If it's never you, you never learn from it. Therefore, the memory never goes away. Mm-hmm. So imagine, victimhood is probably the worst thing physiologically. It's probably the most anti-human thing we can do to someone, in that sense, because the whole system is based on learning. So to go back to Nicole. So if she walks away from stuff she's not learning, then it's going to come right back into it. And so you could see that learning to spike, that just goes like this, and every time you learn to spike higher and higher and higher and higher, to the moment where the physiological repercussion of that demand of energy fries you into a freeze mode.
Yeah.
I think we can relate to a lot of people doing this shit.
People, yeah,
like we know a few. Like if you look at depression, it never happens like this. There was that, and then that
goes down. Yeah. For sure. Oh, we've talked about it when we were playing around with the circle and the DNA and the tornado and the cone and the whole thing. Cool, you know, like it was.
Those were fun.
Like you see how it bounces back and forth because it's
production of energy stop. By the way, so at some point the acidity goes back to normal. So you're like, well, let's do this again.
Yeah.
So you could have a cycle like this, non-stop. And so what was interesting with this, and so how did I approach it? So I was like, oh, Nicole, let's do the steady stuff. The training is one thing, but also the steady to not spike.
Right.
So this week, she woke up at 1.3.
That's awesome.
That's which I was so happy. The day of the competition, she woke up at 2.3 or 2.9, whatever, under 3.
Huge.
So she was so happy. And you know when you start to read hope in messages?
Yeah.
It was so cool, right? You could see she felt she had control, which of course lowered everything, right?
Right.
And so what was interesting is like the other day, she had a bad workout and still woke up at 1.3 the next morning. So I was like, all right, now we're winning. But the reason is because she pulled herself back.
Yeah.
So that shows you that the importance of the behavior stuff. So it's not reactive. She had a bad workout and you can't avoid that. But what she did through the cardio I was making her do, is learn not to spike, not to go there. It's like, no, pull back. Pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back. And she was able to do that and not go into the high level of lactate because she did not need the excessive amount of energy required because she did not go there.
Right. The obsession side didn't take over.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Is that what obsession is? Yeah. Obsessive compulsive. It's a behavior.
It just keeps spinning.
Yeah, keeps spinning. It's like more energy, more energy, more energy, more energy.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I've had some clients, I have them do certain things and you start to see, and so I'll do steady cardio, but I'm dealing with CrossFitters and I know you're very, just fucking do it. But I'm like, well, why don't we have fun with it a little bit? So I'm like, pick 6 to 7 exercises and just move for 45 minutes where you can continue.
That's another way of doing it. That's all. Yeah.
But it was interesting because they all finished like, wow, I felt very good. I was like, yeah.
Right. But so, by the way, that's still probably a more fun way, for example, even to do Disney in December.
Yeah, well, because then at least you're not just stuck.
Right, exactly. So, well, because, again, so that means the core of all this is behavior.
Right, yeah.
Is changing behavior when it comes to stress.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm starting to think that's what training is. Because you had training sessions where you produce muscle, somewhere you don't. Is that because it's behavior based?
Yeah, and
like how you approach.
That's a lot of the stuff I've been, playing around towards the emotional mapping side. Like you start to see when you look at the large population of football players, the behavior is a certain type.
Right.
Military, certain type.
Sprinters.
They all have the same behavior. Yeah. So it's learned behavior.
Yeah. But is that what they choose sprinting? Is that what they choose football? Because we're talking about validation of the environment. It's like, this is who I want to be. I want that type of behavior, and then they feed on, and then they feed toward that and stuff like that. But it's the same idea. I'm starting to wonder how much we're training the body versus how much we're training the behavior, honestly.
Right. Yeah, because now you can even look at, outside of the gym, you start looking at drug addicts, you start looking at gangs, you start looking at CrossFitters.
CrossFitters and drug addicts.
Isn't that a gang and a cult and addiction?
But it's a good cult. It's a good cult, which, by the way, I agree. It's a cult, but it's a good cult.
It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, so it's that
look
validation.
At drug addicts. Yes, exactly, right. But what is validation if not observation of the environment that fits the prediction?
Right. Yeah.
That's what validation is. I want to be a good boy, and I'm looking to make sure that I am a good boy. Yeah. Like I'm a good boy, and
that's where the social construct starts to play a role.
Right, exactly. Boom. So if I'm a CrossFitter and they're telling me I'm supposed to die, I die, and I'm there waiting for the high fives.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what you get out of your community, and you go like, I'm a good boy.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. That's how I move forward. I get it. So you're starting to change your behavior. So instead of going to drugs, you go like, I can find it here.
Right.
Okay. And that obsession What is that obsession? I need more energy being spent. Well, I'll maybe do that with workouts. I'll train 3 times a day, which is better than drugs up until it becomes. But then again, what is he going to do if you keep asking for more energy? Sooner or later, it's going to fry you.
Right.
And when it does, you crash, depression, recover, do it again.
Yeah.
So there's a physiological aspect to that. So we can stop before we get to depression. If we have stuff at least related to things like this, we know how to stop it.
Right.
Like again, Nicole had a bad workout, woke up normal the next morning. So now she has control. Now she goes like, wait.
Yeah.
I can have bad workouts. And imagine the weight off of her shoulders.
Yeah.
One bad workout, you wake up at 23.
Right.
Imagine how bad it is.
Yeah.
How bad we feel bad. Imagine how bad Nicole feels.
Yeah, crazy.
When she's at 18. It must be like, dude, that's a burner question.
Yeah.
Workout. I don't want to wake up at a burner question level.
That would be miserable.
Can you imagine? We did it once a week.
Yeah. But that would
knowing we were doing
that explains so many people at the seminar that couldn't sleep. And it'd be cool to test because they didn't feel validated because they didn't push hard enough and they felt they should have died harder at the workout.
So full flight cannot. Yeah. Finally. Yeah, we're starting to fight. Because that's been bothering us for fucking 5 years now, 6 years, whatever it's been.
That's
why
that explains a lot.
Yeah, that
of
explains
things.
So much. But again, it gives us a physiological component relating to behavior.
The behavior side, yeah.
That it's not, the body's not reactive, it's a behavior thing.
Right. I love it. So going deeper into this training, are we going to try and do some more beta testing with people? I think it'd be cool to start to figure out when those switches are, like is it exactly, maybe not but like an average of like when that switch is. Would be,
it's around, I mean, the acidity is around 20 because this is how we test acidity with lactate. They call it lactic acidosis, but it's incorrect. It's at 20 millimole. That's done. They use it because they know that's what the shit. Yeah, it's the pH goes all the way to 6.7. That means you die.
Right.
So, but the key is, and that's the part that is missing everywhere there, is they don't put behavior in it. So, what do I mean by that? You have, as you said, you have symptoms of anxiety. Is it toward the physical? Like anxiety sensitivity. Do you have physical, cognition, social? Right. So that means that all three, but more toward one, is leading you to think what a fail is. Right. Right. So the key is that failure. That failure means the lack of validation, means I need more energy is required before it crashes you down. Right. So which one it is that triggers that fail feeling? Yeah. Because you push and then you look around and you don't crashes. Yeah. Because then that energy is going nowhere. Right. I mean, there is no oomph out of it. Because the observation is not matching the prediction. You get somatic error, more energy being spent but not used, and then it all blows and everything crashes. So behavior is key. So for example, I gave you one way. For example, let's take Nicole, right? So I gave her the steady cardio because what I want is her not to spike. Now I have Janina, a sprinter. Can I tell her not to spike? No. You know her, not going to happen. That's not her. Yeah. She's going to spike. Right. So the problem is not the spiking for her. The problem is the coming back. Right. Her problem is she spikes and she stays there 3 days. Right. Not anymore. But you know what I mean? How to crash. How do I get her to come back? She wants to spike. You know her. That's what she's asking for. But what she needs is to come back right away. How do we do that? So that means that instead of spiking and staying, the problem is staying. Right. So that means that I need to spike, come back. But come back right away. Don't stay. Right. So burn the question might be an issue. Yeah. Because that makes you stay there for an hour and crash you completely. And if you can go through and gamma and everything, but if it's too much, you can't. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the fight for me, mentally at least, is like, I might get at 20, but that disruption of gamma, I'll stay there. I'll force my brain to stay there, and that's my struggle. That's what I like. Anyway. But what I want is touch, come back. So, and the coming back is the part. The learning to spike, but the learning to come back from the spike. Yeah. So for her, it would be, that's what we're going to do this week, because she's done for a while with the races, is Airdyne or whatever makes her feel like a fail, where she spikes and then come back from it. Right. Staying connected to the source of the stress. So for example, on the Airdyne, you go 10 seconds or 20 seconds, go max, but then stay on the Airdyne and keep going at a decent level. Right. So go to 100, stay at 60. Yeah. Go to 100, stay at 60. But the key is coming back. Keep your ass on the chair. Don't freak out. Don't walk away. Right. Yeah. And don't keep
That was the songs I was doing where you sprint to the song and then just walk or just...
Right, exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter if I'm crawling, like, not crawling, but like just walking at a slow pace, but I'm going to go high. Yep. And then I'm still staying on the treadmill, looking straight ahead and moving forward.
Right. Yeah. And therefore, you came back. So from a cognition perspective, if you look, what you did is you stayed capable of functioning.
Right. Yeah.
Your C was like, I will not function. Right. I don't care if I crawl. I'm going to look forward. I'm going to be present. I'm not going to let myself not be present. Right. Which means no matter what happens to me, I will stay present. Right. And then I put myself into a horrible sprint or whatever where I want to disengage and I don't.
Right.
I want to disengage, I don't. And so what matters is not the spike. What matters is coming back from it, not disengaging.
And I think that's really what it sounds like, it's almost like understanding that epiphany moment, right? So for me, it clicked. Shout out to Action Bronson, just in case he wants to do a collab, because he cooks really good food. I don't know if you've ever seen who he is. He did
on Joe Rogan.
On Joe Rogan, but amazing dude.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, but so he said, he's like, I got tired of being told I was fat by my wife and it got called out by everybody. He said, so I went out and I ran around the block and he's like, that's all I had today. So he learned to take himself as high as he could and then brought himself back without maybe this is like the ego speaking of them wanting to, what do you normally see when people want to get back in shape? And I'm at fault for this for sure, where you go so hard for the first 5 days and then you just crash completely for the next 3 days, right? Exactly. And I used to see that at my gym all the time where people would show up and they're like, I want 5 days a week. You're like, you can't. And so you do one crazy workout, they show up the second day and they're gone forever.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's also part of the soreness also has to relate
right, because you know what they're looking at? They're looking at the spike and they stay, which is the last thing you want, because now you have a fail for the entire workout. So that'll destroy your confidence. And again, now prediction observation don't match, because your prediction was like, I'm tough, I'm going to do this. You want to do it, and then your body tells you, fuck no.
Right.
That somatic error is difficult. Again, what matters in that behavior is coming back.
Yeah.
So can you stay in a fail for too long? Facebook tells you can. I disagree. Because
how does Facebook tell you can though?
With the fail, oh, you have to be tough. You have to grind through, tack. No, I mean, but be a winner. Don't let go. Look at
all the posts, the inspirational quote posts.
It's the way you look at the world.
Yeah.
It's not the world itself. It's the way you look at the world. And I'm like, no, sometimes the world is doing shit to you. I'm sorry. You got to, you never wish for the world to be softer. You just wish to become stronger, type of thing. But if you stay in the fail, that's not getting stronger. If you look at the fundamental structure of the body is a learning mechanism. So that means that failing means no.
Right.
You're not, you know what I mean? You can learn from the fail, but at that moment, that's not what's happening. It's just you're not adapting. We've seen that with interoception a lot, where when that happens too much, you dysregulate the system to the point where it has a snowball effect where everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
There's limits. So the key is you want stress, go back up, because then you can learn from it. But if you stay within that negative, it's a snowball effect where at some point, the entire system gets completely dysregulated because the body probably freaks out.
Right.
For many different reasons.
So that's why certain people can't push, maybe not necessarily burn the questions, but it's always that pace.
Right.
Because they like to reach that threshold and stay there. They don't know how to reach and then come back down.
Exactly. Because you make them go there, it's a fail. Right. How long can you take a fail? And again, you take a fail, you spike. You take a fail, you spike. At some point they crashed and now they cannot go back there.
Right.
It's imagine just from pure acidity perspective.
Yeah.
At some point the body's either you stop forever or eventually we're going to die. So
it has to go through,
There are limits against this. By the way, that overproduction of energy, I don't have time to go into this, but that's the MIR 378. This is cancer. Yeah, cancer is in the center of overproduction of energy. Energy not being used like this. This is where you see that MIR 378 that I was talking about, the epigenetics of cancer. It's right in the center of that.
Yeah.
Lactate, the Warburg effect, where the lactate fuels the cancer cells.
Right.
That's where it is. Yeah. And acidity and cancer, all that stuff. That's where it is. This is at the center of that. Right. Anyway, I remember cancer and depression.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the wheel of itself. It's in the center. But so the key is to address the behavior. So I don't want Nicole to spike, steady cardio. I want Janina to come back, so I'm going to make her do EMOMs, where I make her go really hard, but then I teach her to come back.
Right.
But come back, so either cognition, social symptoms, or physically. That depends on what her thing is.
Right.
For you, for example, it would be you want to stay present.
Yeah.
You will never disengage. That's learned behavior from the mountain and everything. It's like, I am not disengaging anymore. So you spike till you feel like it, and then you win.
Yeah.
You come back, and you stay there, and then you win. Then we go quit +1.
Yeah.
And once you've done with that session, what you have trained yourself to do is your win.
Right.
Not my win, not anybody else's win.
Exactly.
Your win, which is do not disengage no matter how you feel. That you can build forever, because every morning when you wake up in the world, you go like, that's what I want.
Right. Yeah.
That's my validation, is not disengaging. So you can do this forever. That means that you're toward cognition, not social construct,
Right.
by the way.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you were in a gym that looks at you going, what the fuck are you doing this? Eventually it can kind of, like a global gym.
Yeah. Well, I had a huge issue with that when we were traveling so much. I was like, I
Exactly.
just don't have a place where I can just fucking train.
And because people look at you funny
Yeah.
when you do it, it's like, but that's my validation matters to me. Stop
Right.
looking at me like this. You're
Yeah.
breaking my own path this way.
Right.
And so that would get to you
Yeah.
eventually, right? So that's the importance of the observation of the world we're in. That's another Facebook where like, don't worry. No, you do, because we're all social creatures. It does matter.
For sure.
But for you, it's that I need to keep my cognition going, being present, while being in the worst of situation. So if you stay in the worst of situation till your cognition breaks, you lost.
Right.
You don't want to teach yourself to lose. On the contrary, that'll just destroy your confidence.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do that workout again?
Right.
You're back
Yeah,
on the mountain
exactly.
losing.
Yeah.
No, we want to be on the mountain winning, not
Right.
losing. So you go, I feel like shit, I come back. Why? Because I know if I repeat that workout, eventually I'll be able to take myself to ridiculous levels and still remain touched. So maybe I can go all the way to almost dying and this time stay present.
Right.
And now you get your win back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fuck. I would have a response, but I'm just,
Yeah.
my head's like,
I don't know. Yeah, but so
that's
for
just
me,
massively.
yeah, but for me, you know what it is, right? Look at my childhood. For me, it's
Right.
like, how do I deal with? I think that's why, because we talked about the comic books and all Schwarzenegger and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But look at the movies that are like all kids, but like Commando and stuff like that. For me, that's what was my idea on martial arts. Was that to just be ready. Be ready for what? Be ready for when they come. Who?
Right.
The enemy. Well, yeah, like either my mother coming or
Yeah,
shit like that.
exactly.
And so for me, my entire life is like, whenever they come again, this time I'll be ready.
Right.
I'll be strong. I'll be able MMA. I'll be able to.
Right.
I'll be ready.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't like competition, because like you're not my enemy, so I don't give a shit.
Right.
But I'll be ready whenever she comes, which
For sure.
she won't. But it doesn't matter. For me, the key is I cannot break down whenever I feel a certain way,
Right.
because that's what happened. I broke down, and I was like, never again. And
Right.
so when I train to go there and go, okay, but let me go a bit further. That's why for me, winning is never the point.
Right.
I don't give a shit. And I don't want to win.
Yeah.
I want a little bit more every time, because what matters is stay in the struggle and go no.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing for me is that simple world
Right.
where mentally I want to, and I'm like, no. And as long as I say no, I'm fine.
Then you're good.
And that's what I look now in every workout, and that has done wonders for me mentally, is like, no.
Right.
Because that's what I couldn't say. I couldn't say no to the dude who sucked my dick. I couldn't say no to my mother to beat me up. So now it's
Right.
like, no.
Yeah.
But I get there and in that workout, and I'm like, no. That's why I do 6 sets, because at 3, I'm like, no. And I'm like, yeah, well, guess what? 3 more.
Yeah. Right.
And then I finish the set, and I'm like, quit +1. I'm like, all right, because
Let's go.
that's quit +1. It's like, no, well, let's do one more then.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm like,
Right.
and behavior-wise, it's just,
Yeah.
that feels much better mentally. So it's training behavior.
Right.
And that's innately then based on what you need, and that's where
Right.
they all fail.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're. I mean, everybody tries to systemize
Exactly.
the whole
To fucking
thing, and
sell it.
it doesn't work because it's.
Because they want to make it an institution. It's like, it doesn't work like that. It's your anxiety, nobody else. Because
Right.
again, it's based on whatever you see as a fail. You don't get to systemize that one.
It's based on what you've gone through in life and what's built you up to
Exactly.
this point. Yeah.
What is a fail for
Right.
you? Well, that'll depend parents' childhood trauma,
thing,
whatever you went through, physical trauma.
So I'm going through it right now with Day, and she's a very good sleeper. But I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, yeah, all right, well, let's just like, what are you gonna do? The baby's like, you cannot not expect the baby to not cry at 3 in the morning.
That's gonna happen. Like on this
so
one.
You wake up, you grab the baby, and you go. And so she got a little bit overtired yesterday, Dea. So just go to sleep. I'll take care of the baby. She's like, well, who's gonna do that? I was like, it's a baby. Like, he's gonna survive. You know,
they do that. Yeah,
we made it a week, so we're good. But
plus,
you could
it's
see
not
like
that much up to you as much as you think, by the way. But that's what you
those
discover.
behaviors, seeing the difference in the stress levels between her and I is so interesting.
But that's your approach to life anyway.
Yeah.
Shit happens, we'll make it through.
Yeah.
But because you learn that, though.
Yeah.
You learn that on the mountain. She hasn't.
Yeah.
So her is like, yeah, but I can't control it. No, but that issue. But then therefore, everything is a challenge. And therefore she stresses.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't learned to let go. Right. So, but that means her anxiety is going to be different than your anxiety. Yours is going to be cognition-based. Hers is going to be on other stuff. Right. And so, understanding that allows you then to have the workout that is necessary for that. So, of course, we can create matrices and stuff like that to go like it's going to be in that direction or whatever. But at the end,
it's very individualized.
It's so individualized. And that's what we see with Nicole. It's like she has when she fails a workout, her failure is a very specific failure to her.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there could be matrices, right? There could be a broad plan, but setting the proper constraints per person is the important part.
At the end, it's the only important part. Because, again, what I see is training behavior. So I don't see training the body in the gym anymore. I see behavior. That was my entire session today was fascinating. I was like, no, you're not training to get bigger. No, you're not training the press to get your shoulders working. It's like, you're going to train one thing and one thing only, to struggle and not quit.
Right.
And so what do you feel like doing today? I was like, clean and press with a sandbag. All right. And then every time I quit, I'm like, good, do one more.
Right. Yeah.
Then I got 2 overhead carries. did 5 sets. At 4th set, I was like, I can't lift it anymore. Good.
Yeah.
Do one more. And I realized like I had to say no in every step, but I was like, those were the good old days.
Right, yeah.
Where every step I was like, no, I'm not quitting, I'm going there. And I was like, that's what I was looking for then. It had nothing to do with strongman, with being a pro or anything. It was like, I make it there so that I'm still alive. Like, just to get to the Carl Friston stuff, the self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's what this is if you can go past that anxiety, like that staying conscious, you prove to yourself you're alive. And that goes so deep in this, but that's what the workout is. Yeah. Prove yourself that you're alive. Right. For you, it's cognition. For me, it's saying no.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's why in between sets, like, you don't like it, even though you can stay in it, because you want to be the cognition while you do it. I don't give a shit. What I want is the voice to tell me no. Remember that post? Yeah. That's the only thing that matters to me. Is that voice telling me no. And that's why I hunt. That's why in between sets, I'm like, bring it on.
Let's go,
Tell me no, please, one more. That way I can do one more set.
Right.
I'm like, okay, let's do this. But then while I'm it, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing this again?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're the opposite. Yeah, while you're in it, you're like, oh, you're not making me disengage because literally I'll die now before I disengage.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's what would give you, like, you cannot face yourself disengaging. I cannot face myself listening to no.
Right.
No, I refuse. You know what I mean? And so that changes your workouts. So if you were to work out my way, then how could it work? Yeah, and so the muscle will not grow. So I think more and more, that's why we see bodybuilders having their own thing, is I think you're not training the body, you're training behavior. And the body is just a representation of the behavior. So I think the mistake we make even with bodybuilding is the good law of economics. When a measurement becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measurement. Yeah. Your body is a measurement of your behavior.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the only thing that matters. So if we train the behavior, then the body follows, not the other way around.
For sure. Yeah, I think, it's all such full circle.
with the shit we've been working out. But then that gives me a physiological representation as to what happens when you fuck up, for example.
Right.
Like how far behavior can take you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what you see there. You go like, how do you wake up at 23 millim? I didn't even know it was physiologically possible.
Yeah,
this goes against everything. Anaerobic threshold, lactic acidosis, this goes against everything.
Yeah.
Like if I give those numbers
To a doctor?
I bet you they call bullshit.
Yeah.
I bet you no one believes those numbers.
We can send it to my dad.
So, I think Nicole said she wants to see people being helped because right now she's in a very positive mindset.
Right.
Because she has control.
Yeah.
And that's the key. But the key was to have the right workout for her. So it's not a workout.
Right.
Which is what we said. You don't teach the squat. You teach that person to squat.
Well, that's the thing that you see everywhere. Is just people just give away these.
Well, they all ask for the matrix now. And I'm like, no. You're going to study the shit first because it matters. It's an excitatory system.
You have to learn the basics and start.
Because, for example, like, of course it's about behavior, but if I had not learned about lactate, then I would not have asked for those numbers. I would not have read those numbers the correct way. I would not understand those numbers the way I do now. And how lactate
But
and
even
depression,
if you had just lactate and you didn't have the Carl Friston,
right,
they wouldn't work either.
It wouldn't work
then they would
either.
start to fail.
Yeah, because I would seeking at those reactive stuff and I would fuck up the workout entirely.
Or you would start going towards a very passive approach of how do we just get the lactate to come down?
Exactly. And then I would turn it into a target and fuck it up completely. Right, because that's not the point. It's not using the lactate. Like, I know I phrase it like this, but that's an oversimplification because the lactate is actually helping you buffer the acidity you're creating by having too much an energy requirement that is too high for the action happening, which is prediction versus observation 101. Mm-hmm. And that relates straight to cancer, by the way. Like, there's such a rabbit hole on this.
That'll be the next episode.
That is such a rabbit hole on this. Like, this is like, read again, Paul Davis, The Demon in the Machine.
Yeah.
This relates to all of that.
I like
the MIR378, like, it's suddenly, like, there's an entire thing that opened in front of me. I was like, when I read that, I was like, oh, this connects so much.
Right.
So if we can direct, so free energy training.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. But behavior.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters. So that's going to be hard for people to understand is that training behavior is like, so it doesn't matter. When you don't like something, instead of like the be tough and go through it, the Facebook stuff is like, no, you don't like it for a reason. Let's find out why.
Right.
Are you being lazy? Yeah. Or is it because it's targeting a fail?
Right.
Because I have one of our clients, Jessica, and she could not do burpees. If you tell her do 100 burpees and see her completely freeze, right? Like right away, behavior-wise. And I was like, all right. So what we're gonna do instead, because I wanted her to play the ghost, and like if you fail, you have to do 50 burpees. And the look on her face. Yeah. She was like, I don't do burpees. 50 burpees, like I can't do that. Whatever it was. I'm like, all right, so let's play a game. What you're gonna do is you're gonna do 6 burpees a minute. Can you do that? Yeah. Like, but I'm looking at her to see, how about 6? How about 8? No, 8 is not. Okay, how about 6? Yeah, I can do 6. 6 a minute. Okay, so we're going to do 6 a minute. And what I want you to do is I want you to do, no matter how many minutes you do, but the second you want to quit, you do 1 more. Right. That's all I'm asking for. It's like, okay, I can do that. She goes into the workout, puts her timer. She goes 6, is like 6, I can do 10. All right. So she does 10 a minute and she's like, nah, I can do 1 more. I don't feel like quitting. She ended up being 15 minutes. And she stopped because the timer went up and she had to leave because the class was done. And she was like, It's like, you did 150 burpees. Yeah. She was like, yeah, in 15 minutes. If I tell you to do 150 burpees in 15 minutes, you cannot do it.
It still surprises me so much when people have these massive wins and you're like, this is so badass. And they're like, yeah, well, cool.
Because but exactly. But that's the thing is they don't understand why it's a win. It's a win because it's a win to you. Yeah. It might not be a win to anybody else. I get it. But to you, you did 150 burpees in 15 minutes. If I'm asking you to do it as an AMRAP, you cannot.
Right.
As an imam, you can. That's the Helen story I tell everybody. Yeah. Right. But what's the difference? One was an AMRAP, which means fail for
long as you
14 minutes, or taken as an imam where you never fail and you learn to come back and you get that positive feeling out of it. Positive because you're learning.
Right. Yeah.
It's a learning behavior. It's a positive behavior. So a win is just what? A win is just learning from an event.
Right.
That's it. And if you do that, you get, because for many reasons, and we go back to what a memory is, I mean, that's the Carl Friston. But that's where it is. So that means that any workout can be done, I'm going to oversimplify, but any CrossFit workout can be done as an AMRAP or as an imam. Depending on who you are and where you are anxiety-wise, if we choose correctly, you'll kill it versus completely fail.
Right.
So that means that just your approach, strategy-wise to the workout will result into a complete win or a complete loss. And that's exactly what we saw with Jessica and burpees.
Yeah.
It was just understanding the psyche behind why was it a fail,
right?
And just not letting her go there.
Yeah.
Because then it's a cognition thing because of her work, because she's a hotshot lawyer, so she has to stay present and not stress. Yeah. So what she doesn't like is stay in the fail.
Right.
She cannot have that. She has to come back, and then because very intense job and stuff like that. Right. I was like, oh well, let's not do that. So it turns out, also she's been in a CrossFit gym in a long time. They're like, oh, do RX, push harder or whatever. So push harder means what? Means stay in the fail until your technique breaks down, and you look like shit, and you can't be present.
Right. Yeah. That's another client I have. She sends me the workouts. I'm like, these are your constraints for the workout. And it's been going so much better.
Right.
It's just, she's still able to do the classes and do everything, but the constraints are just different. I'm like,
that's
just
it.
Do your thing.
Right. So that means we can take any workout, approach correctly, it's a win, approach correctly, it's a loss.
Yeah.
That's the stuff with the bench press. At first you get the reps, but then become objective based,
and then
stressed
stopped,
out. Because objective based means the connection isn't there. So instead of going like, let me see how far I can do this without letting go, then it turned into something else. Okay. Me trying to become pro and everything, it turned into something else. Who give a shit? Because it's not about other people. I never care.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what's behind me that I need to fight. That's all. And I'll be there all my life. But doesn't matter. Now that I know, I'm like, oh, okay.
No, I can do it.
All day.
Right.
And I could do a competition learning about this, but never the guy in front of me.
Yeah.
Okay. Trauma is trauma. Doesn't matter what it, I mean, you just, the point is to live with it, not to make it go away. It's not going away.
Yeah.
The mountain is never going away. The point is to stay present.
For sure.
Because he taught you something. Right. So that now that's your life. So it's not everybody's life, it's your life. And I think a lot of people refuse to do that, by the way.
Right.
That's my life. That's me. That's how I do things.
Yeah.
If people could just accept that, which, I don't have this, I don't have that, I have that.
Right.
I think they would do a lot better.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that myself. Like doing shit where I was like, dude, it's not you. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You don't do it anyway. It's not you. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm like, yeah, but no. So that's a lesson I have to learn now is like, you have your life. You do things your way. Just accept it all the way.
Yeah.
I mean, and deal with the consequences. But so what? That's what I'm going to do anyway. All right.
Right.
Then let's do it that way.
I like it.
Just accept the crazy.
Accept the crazy. We'll finish on accept the crazy.
Accept the crazy.
Awesome, guys. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Yep.
Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, subscribe,
like
Instagram, Mighty Networks. We'll see you guys there.
Can you like us on iTunes? It actually makes a difference. It pushes it forward, please. Give us like 5 stars, please.
Beautiful.
Bye, guys.
Later.
Oh, shit. I said guys.
Wasn't me, though. Boom.